Welcome to the Way of the Spiritual Path. My name is Ursula Lentini, and this is my guest, David Gibbs. We are talking today about there's got to be a better way. How many times in your life have you said that and not come up with any answers? Well, on the spiritual path, we find the answers because we have to surrender to the degree that there's nothing else possible. Then we open ourselves to incredible possibilities, fight through things, accept things, eat humble pie, and then catch some silver lining. David has a very powerful story, and I wanted to bring him on the show to share his story with you so that you can also understand that things happen and then things still get created. So David, you and I know each other from the youth ministry, plus a few other spiritual practices that we do together.
Yes.
And you have a beautiful son, Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten bits and pieces of your history, and I have more your current story.
Right.
So how were things before?
Before you and I met, high school, college, graduated, started out in the work world, had, I guess my share of mild ups and downs to some degree. The first major one might have been the love lost in college, which was a tremendous heartbreak. And, you recover and you move on and, launched off into my career and, lo and behold, got fired from my second job. All right. So devastated. All right. And so one of those kind of breaking, gotta be a better way moments.
Okay.
And so, but it also opened me up to consciously begin to engage my journey. I found a church that was a New Thought metaphysical church. I was headlong into studying, very involved in that church. I was in class, every week, sometimes several times a week. Got very involved in the ministry, was teaching youth then. Went on to kind of precede the minister before the service on Sundays, several times a month. And, like I said, just very knee deep into neck deep, head deep, whatever you want to say. Saturated into just absorbing as much as I could and creating my life, if you will, And so, again, you recover, you move forward, you go upward. And, a big thing about kind of being on the journey is obviously, like anyone else, we want to create comfort in our lives.
Our human nature, our human tendency for that sense of security.
Exactly. We're looking for that security, that comfort, and we use comfort as a signal of security.
Yes.
Which it may be to some degree, but it's not also always conducive with growth and expansion.
No, because it can also be a dead end point.
Absolutely.
We get comfort, then we get complacent.
It's very true.
When we're in the land of complacency, we are not creating.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes bad things happen, or not bad, because it's not good or bad, it's how we label it, right? So you can't even use the word bad when we're on the spiritual path. But sometimes when difficulty comes our way, it's the catalyst that for the change.
Right.
And we don't see it that way because we get upset. Hey, my comfort is being disturbed. My sense of reality is being disturbed. My way that I want, my ego, is being upset. I don't like it.
Right. And ego was exactly the word that I was gravitating towards. And, our ego is our mask, our persona, our public face. And when something of that ego gets shattered and obliterated, we got to figure out, who am I? Mm-hmm. What am I? What does this mean? Re-identify. And so, I've come to look at those as experiences and opportunities for me to deepen my work, and so...
and deepen sense of self.
Deepen my sense of self, my awareness of self, because the true self is and always was and preceded David Gibbs, so I understand that now, but in those moments, it's a matter of discovery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling lost along the way.
Oh yeah, incredibly so. In those moments especially. I mean, the good fortune is, kind of having what I would say about a 25 year history with the path. At least I know where to go back to and what to go back to. I've never doubted the path. I may have had difficulty getting back on the path in those crisis moments, but because I have webbed or embedded so much into my everyday experience, the meditation, the service, the fellowship and all those other kinds of things, it helps, to have those as guideposts and guardrails, if you will, for the most part.
Yes.
But then the kind of moments we're talking about are those all hell breaks loose moments.
Went off the
what I'm
bridge,
saying?
landed in the woods, landed in the swamp.
How do I climb over the guardrail to get back on the road?
Exactly.
What I'm saying is what we're talking about then.
Exactly. So what were some of the turning points in your life that really gave you more depth into the understanding of who is David Gibb and who am I, spirit I,
right,
on the path?
I mentioned a couple. One was, my first love, and, the 2 year funk, to some degree. And you only recognize that in retrospect, how long that arc of off-trackness is. But I wasn't conscious even about my journey to the degree I were to become later after, losing the first, actually it was my second job, and that was the one that, the point of discovery of a path and a way and so forth. Couple of other relationship failures, if you will, were very, instrumental in that. But I'd say the most recent experience, all right, revolves around the circumstance of what is also my greatest blessing. All right. At the age of 45, I found myself, expecting a child, all right, unplanned. And, we had not formed the relationship that was going to sustain bringing a child into this world. I'm talking about the mother and I. And, as you can imagine, when two souls are deeply affected and not in accord, lots of opportunity for drama. You know what I'm saying? And so, and yet, unlike anything else in my life that I experienced previously, this was one, that did not have a short time horizon on it, and B, was one that I was not ever in 8 lifetimes, 100 lifetimes going to walk away from. You know what I'm saying? There was a third life, that mattered as much as my own.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and so, and when you're dealing with what feels like completely irreconcilable differences, it was probably and has been probably the most harrowing of all of the experiences. And, even when, having been on the journey for so many years and all this other kind of stuff, this, you almost think you can't even encounter another dark night of the soul or whatever the case may be.
Done. I've mastered
or whatever.
I've mastered this. I've gotten over this. I'm solid.
And yet, here we go.
All right.
And, the thing about the journey is, you're going to find your unprecedented experiences, the ones that are going to get your attention, if you're lucky. You know what I'm saying? And that's...
Why do you say if you're lucky?
Well, because that's the reframe.
Yes.
That's, the...
Deepening. The
deepening. And we're talking about what right now is a 6-year.
Time period.
So, hey, that's a long time.
Yes.
All right. Even in human relative terms, and, I clearly had reached a point where I felt like, I don't know whatever else I have to give or give up. You know what I'm saying? But you have it, and you have it to give up and to give over and to release and to let go. And so then, you're bare bones,
Yeah.
and there's a
Feel like you're
nakedness.
naked, yes.
And
Raw.
and it's raw,
Yeah.
and
No protection.
deep sensitivities and all those other kinds of things. And so,
Yeah,
but
to
That's all right.
speak to the rawness, you're an emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
You're empathic, you feel other people's feelings, you're in touch with your own emotions, you work with your emotions, you don't throw them off to the side. So in that vulnerability, that nakedness, you're also with the entire emotional process.
Yeah.
So not everybody is as in touch with their emotions as you are.
Right.
So that's a whole nother component that your story is dealing with.
Sure. And, I think, there's something to the fact that as men, we are even less trained, equipped,
Yes.
socialized,
Yep.
to deal with our emotions in an outward way. And, we create all kinds of stuff, that are really coping mechanisms, if you will.
Right.
But aren't necessarily aiding you
Not at all, really.
in any kind of discovery.
For sure.
Reality, deepening of awareness of a sense of self and all those kinds of things. And so it's not like you always have any male, friends and support around
Yes.
to help you with that. And so, that was a part of the challenge. I mean, even in this experience in particular, even family, male or female.
Yes. Talk about that, because that's important. Because we all have family that we're dealing with, and we think, hey, my family's there for me. They've got my back.
Right.
But when you're like knock, knock, knock,
Well, it's twofold. It's one, when your family's not used to seeing you a certain way.
Okay.
That's got to be something.
Yeah.
And then two, when what you're dealing with is powerful enough that in its own right it affects them in a way that's challenging for them to cope with.
That a child is in the family now.
Yes, and the context and the circumstances and just the whole idea of feeling helpless.
Yes.
In the situation, and so I understood or began to understand that there were limits to even what I could expect from my family, which thrusts you back on your own resources
Yes.
again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the invisible ones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Invisible, intangible, so more deepening.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of changes did you have to make in your life to accommodate Emmanuel being a part of your life?
You know what? I don't even look at the changes as being outward, even though you can say they were outward and they were changes, but they weren't changes as in, oh, I can't do this anymore, now I got to do this. It was more kind of, it was all inner work.
Inner work.
It was all inner work because, I knew enough about the truth, and, I loved this boy. I loved life. I loved people and all this other kind of stuff. And so, stuff, what would I say? You're pruning along the way anyway.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Things just fall out of your life, particularly once you unplug the energy investment that we have in those things.
Very good, yes.
You know what I'm saying? Once
yes.
we unplug the kind of ego high we get off of certain things or whatever the case may be.
Wants or comparing.
And so at
climbing
this
a ladder.
point, I was largely thankful that I had an opportunity to be a father, which was something that I had kind of not resigned, but reconciled with the possibility that it might not happen. I was 45 at that time. I was reconciled to, maybe that's not in the cards for me. So, this little boy was a tremendous opportunity. There was, it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was giving up anything. I felt like I was getting an opportunity,
sure.
To be, something that I always in the back of my mind had as a picture of my future. And so, but what it was is, and why I keep using the word deepening.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? What we know and discover along this journey is that, whatever your spiritual source is in terms of literature material and things you read and study and so forth, you can cross the same idea 100 times.
And not really.
And get another level of depth.
Yes.
A million times. Something I
and
always
think,
like to
think
say.
You've got it, and you're like, yeah, I'm good on that, and then it comes back around, and
Well, you got it for that moment.
Exactly, for that layer.
For that layer.
Yes.
You got it on that level.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And an expression I like to use is that, God is infinite. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the knowledge of God is infinite.
We haven't a clue.
You know what I'm saying?
My mind, yes.
And so, and when you recognize that this could go on forever, mm-hmm. You kind of just lay back in it. You know what
Surrender.
I'm saying? All right, here's another layer, another level, another whatever. So the idea about deepening,
That's the better way, is the
Yes.
deeper way.
Right.
So when we ask, what's the better way, it's to go deeper,
Mm-hmm.
to surrender more,
Right.
to let go of ego even more.
Mm-hmm.
So our agenda, what we want, what we think, what our framework was of who I am and how I exist in
Mm-hmm.
the world, and how I show up and what people think of me and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
that just gets thrown out.
Yeah.
Can you describe where you're at now?
I feel like I'm coming through to the other side of this experience right now, this round of deepening, not in the sense that I feel like I'm done or I'm complete or I'm fully baked or whatever the case may be, because part of the recognition is that you're never done. There's, no matter where you are, there's always another level. There's always another step. There's always another depth of awareness that you're going to arrive at. And so, but I'm at a place where, what you do is you come out on the other side a whole hell of a lot lighter. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm feeling very transparent. I'm feeling very light. I'm feeling very at ease. And I feel like I'm in a space and a place where I'm literally manifesting out of my heartbeat.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? Something I've always, or not always, but, in the later stages of my journey or where I am, proximal to where I've been at this point, I always often seek clarity and conviction. I recognize that the conviction comes out of the clarity.
Good.
All right. And so it's, let me get clear about what do I want? What do I really want? And even a question like that you can ask on a number of different levels.
Yes. Because
and so
who's the I, right? Is
Yes.
it the ego I? Is it the big I?
How do I get at a depth, that's close enough to the truth of who I am, to be able to have that be what guides me? And so, I recognize now that when I seek that level of depth, and that my desires, are not just for myself, that they're for, a much more broader and inclusive range of being, beyond myself and others, then, the manifestation is not even mine's to claim or my work, if you will. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And things just start to show up, and I'm like, wow, that matches just the thought that I was having. Mm-hmm. And it's more than a thought, because your everyday thought is on a deeper level.
Right. So
at this point,
with the clarity and the conviction, follows naturally follows the manifestation.
Absolutely.
But when we're at this level of consciousness, we're so busy being clear, being convicted, and going back and forth being clear, that it's not all about the manifestation. The manifestation is just the unfoldment.
Yes.
Like we have a thought, we say, yeah, that's the kind of thought I want to share. We speak the thought, and the thought landing on somebody else's ears is just the natural rollout of the first two steps.
Yes.
So what I hear you is saying, clarity, 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 and once we have clarity, we can say, yes, this is the right direction. And we've spoken many times about it's not my direction, but it's the best direction
Right.
for all people, or for this situation, or under these circumstances.
Right.
I always say, when God gives us choices, it's you have 5 choices. This one is like this big, and then the other ones are this big, and you're like, which one should I choose? So we just choose the one that's going to work the best.
Right.
And that's a part of the surrendering process.
Absolutely.
One of the things I really admire about you is your fathering skills. When you're with Emmanuel, you're always eye to eye. You always come down to his level. And you speak to him like a person rather than my son. You never pull the my son. I'm the father, you're the son. You don't pull that role playing because you speak to him spirit to spirit. And you check in with him, and you have him check in with himself. He's how old now?
5.
5. So he is a highly skilled young man, even though he has a 2-household situation. He is able to govern himself and regulate his emotions and tell people what he needs and still be 5 years old.
Yeah.
So it's really a wonderful balance, and I think because of the maturity that you have, the spiritual maturity and maturity in age, you're able to set yourself, on your side of the fence, and then say, okay, here's what's going on. How do you feel? What do you need? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And he can develop his sense of self and communicate it. Already you're teaching him beautiful spiritual path skills that's unusual. Even though he has this skill set and he's operating in the normal world, he's still able to contain himself and interact accordingly and be able to have clarity on who's who and what's what and what's his response to that. So I love watching him interact on Sundays, and I love the two of you interacting. I learned so much just from your spiritual maturity, the way you father, and the way you manage the other kids on Sunday when we work together. So I really appreciate
I appreciate it. It means a lot to me, both for my own son as well as the other youth and teens.
We think on the spiritual path, easy peasy. Like once we surrender and toss away ego, that we just walk and keep walking and walking and walking and no problem. No problem, that's it. Nope, that's not it. Life is not any easier on the spiritual path than it is in the day-to-day world. It's just different. And the way we react to things in life being thrown at us is also different. That's basically what the difference is between being on the path and not being on the path. We have to do, now we don't have to, but I have done a lot of the work behind the scenes. There's a lot of diligence that needs to happen, practices, training, and so on and so forth. David, since we've met each other, I don't know how long have we known each other?
2.5 years.
That's all?
Okay, it feels like more. We've packed a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it sure does. So I have many practices that I kind of keep to myself because sometimes they are a little weird.
Yeah.
And I could only ask certain people to even venture, like, hey, you want to try this thing? It's kind of weird. But you have been brave-heartedly...
or weird enough, to actually join in a number of those things.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, actually one of the things that has always struck me as I learned more and more and more about you is the range of things that you're involved in. And I would almost essentially say the way you've shaped and molded your life, to... have you actively engage in multiple ways, in different ways, in ways that you're either deepening your own experience and actually it's not either or, it's a both and being in service to others.
Yeah.
And so we first met, through the youth ministry at the Centers for Spiritual Living, Midtown.
Yes.
All right. And so, that's just a beginning place, as I learned later about all the different things that you're involved in. First of all, how did you even come to be involved with the Center for Spiritual Living?
I've studied metaphysics. Well, I've been on my spiritual path since like second grade, probably other lifetimes, right? Right. Back and forth. But second grade was the first epiphany. And then in grade school, I was asking all the questions. I was being the good Catholic girl. 7th and 8th grade, they weren't answering my questions. High school, the dark ages. So as soon as I left home at 18, I moved to LA and I was on like spiritual Mecca land and studied every possible thing that I could get my hands on. Fortunately, the cousin that I was living with taught metaphysics and it's called eschatology, which verbatim, really, it's the same languaging, same era of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes' work.
All right.
So I formally studied with him for 4 years as I was doing all this other exploration, and then went into another dark age period, landed back in Atlanta and found the center. It was a different name at that time.
Okay.
So since 2003, like you had said in the other show, going to classes diligently. I was on the usher committee. I was on the youth ministry since the very beginning because I'm all about the youth. And the practitioner, like you name it.
Right.
If it was a volunteer position, I was in it.
Right.
So over the years since 2003, along with all the studies, up to 2008 when I got my ministerial license. So it's really a 6-year program to become a minister, plus the intensives. But the youth ministry, since the beginning when I got there, I've always been passionate about that.
So, and what I also learned is part of your foundational work is around a specific type of counseling that you provide individuals.
Yes.
What's the name of the counseling? Say a little bit about
internal family systems.
Yes.
And that's the subconscious work.
Right.
So in order to do that proficiently, I had to really do mine deeply.
Your own work.
Yes.
Relative to internal family systems.
Right.
Right.
So I did 1 year of, I was the client.
Right.
And the psychologist needed a case study because it was new. That was a new teaching to him. So he said, I really want to dive deep in this before I just put it out to my clients. So I ended up doing a year's work with him, but it was actually 4 years of work because
within a year, you're saying?
Yes.
4 years within 1 year.
Because
Okay.
you know me to be an
I was going to
intense
say, I'm
person.
not surprised.
Yeah. So by the end of that, I got so much out of it. I said, I must share this.
Wow.
It is so transformational. So that's the thing that I love the most out of everything that I love. I love the most watching people go through their transformation in 1 hour. Their life changes. They come in, they're like, I surrender. I'm done. There's got to be a better way. Let's dig in. And then we go inside, do the healing. They sit up and they're like, wow, what just happened? And they walk out a different person than they came in. To me, that's a blast.
Well, I know even in my experience with it and being one of your clients, I certainly would consider it a transformational experience, and B, something that, I still probably get to do more, going forward. So, I'm going to be on your calendar sometime soon. Say a little bit about Twin Hearts meditation and how you got involved in that.
Okay, so that's pranic healing. Now, pranic healing is Master Choa's work.
Okay.
And he, chemical engineer. So all this work on science of mind, which is metaphysics, understanding physics, the laws and principles that govern the universe beyond the physical. So we both study that. That's you're well versed in that as well. When I discovered pranic healing, or when pranic healing discovered me is more like it, it was all the metaphysical training and understanding put into application for the service of healing. So I'm real big on service. You're real big on service. So service is a part of the direction of my life and what I do and who I am and why I exist. So I was like, what? Metaphysics on service in application?
All wrapped in one.
I'm in. The Twin Hearts meditation is a small gift of the body of work that he's done.
Right.
And since 2008, I've been offering this weekly.
Yes.
So I can't even count.
Right.
I'm not a numbers person, but I
Yeah.
can't even count.
It's huge.
And it's just a simple meditation. It's 21 minutes, but I've gathered people over the years. And people come and people go, but the meditation is cumulative. The more we do it, the more it transforms us. And because of his high intelligence, he's packed in so many techniques and spiritual technologies into that 21-minute meditation that it's profound when I just contemplate, like, what's going on in this meditation.
Right. I notice that when I go, I don't have the exact same experience every time.
Nope.
All right. And there are a couple of times that really stand out to me. One was an experience I had where I literally felt exactly what you just said a minute ago. It almost felt in the meditation that I was being guided down, through, over, and around, different, I might say, states of consciousness.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Part of, another way I want to describe it as into different rooms. Because they felt discreet enough. And I was present to what was happening in his words and his languaging, in the spirit and the movement of spirit in that process. I literally felt like I was not going through a haunted house, but going through a spiritual house.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it was so powerful.
Because every moment you're like, wow, look at this, and it's amazing, and ooh.
And the distinct textures of each
vibration.
room, each vibration was so palpable. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Twin Hearts, and then there's pranic healing.
Yes.
And pranic healing as both a study and a practice,
Yes.
is very powerful. And I think one of the things I shared with you about my experience going through the pranic healing training was how important, necessary, and valuable the imaginative faculty is in pranic healing. But my discovery was, well, guess what? That's what we're using in life anyway.
That's right.
Particularly in this experience, right?
Yes.
We're using our imagination to create things
Yes.
all the time
All
anyway.
the time. Even a child, when they draw, There's a whole story around some scribble scratches.
Yeah, and they're very clear about that story.
Yes.
So it's very clear in their minds, and you know what? Whether we realize it or not, the results and the experiences and the effects in our lives are actually emanations of what's in our mind as well.
That's right.
Whether we want to own and acknowledge that, and part of the journey, a huge part of the journey is coming in contact with that ownership.
Yes.
And awareness that I'm generating this on some level.
That's right. Even Einstein said, he has a famous quote about imagination
Yes.
and how powerful
I
it
know
is.
that. Yeah, he said, I'd rather have, a healthy dose of imagination than all the facts, or so-called facts and knowledge we believe we've accumulated. Because what he's doing is he's using imagination to gain a better understanding of a deeper reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the evolution.
Yes.
So Master Choa, in his brilliance, said, okay, we have this gift of imagination. What can we do with it? What's the highest thing that we could do with it? And that's why he developed service, healing, specifically, emotional, mental, physical, in which those are all the layers of our experience. So when we experience pranic healing, it's the intentionality, and we bring in so many layers of ourselves to do a simple healing. The thing I really respect and enjoy and feel passionate about pranic healing is the self-care. Many spiritual practices, it's do this, do that, okay, but this one is check your energy body, here's your chakras, here's your aura, cleanse, like taking energy showers every day.
Yeah.
And then when we're whole and complete and fulfilled and contained connected, I should say, as within our spirit, within that which creates us, whatever that language is for anybody. And Master Choa doesn't name that. He just says, whatever you want to call it that.
Right.
He calls it energy. He calls it intelligence, power, and love, which most religions agree, like, oh yeah, we say
right.
that. So he just keeps it clean, does that, and then the pranic healing is so powerful. Miracles happen on a regular basis when I
Right.
do pranic healing work with people, and other pranic healers tell me their story.
Sure.
It's so powerful.
Sure. Another activity, experience, engagement, that you've exposed me to that I found great pleasure in is the Tao.
Yes.
All right. And, there's, the Tao Te Ching, the book. I had read that for years. And then there's Tao, not as a religion, because they say we're not a religion.
Right.
But the Tao is that which is the fundamental essence of all religions.
Right.
Very powerful concept.
Yes.
Very powerful thought. How did you come into the Tao?
Funny little story. I'll try and make it short. I was at a movie. The spiritual movies don't go mainstream.
Right.
So they'll release them, and then people will say, okay, I'll host it in my house. I was at one of these hosted meetings, and that was way back in the day. They were being all spiritual and being all like, la, la, la. And I'm like, listen, you said 8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock, it's 7 o'clock, you know, what's going on here? And I got all tough, and Lake's like, oh. So after the movie, I calmed down, and she approached me, and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I was a little rough. I could have said things nicer. And she's like, no, you were right. We said 7. It should be 7. But I think you're just the person to receive a blessing. And I'm like, oh, am I that bad that I need a blessing? So the Catholic, in me came up like, bad girl. So I said, okay, what blessing? My Detroit girl came out like, what blessing? Like, what? And one of my dear friends, who's also very path-minded, got the same invitation from another resource around the same week. So we both ended up going, and it was this outside of the perimeter, like in the sticks of Georgia, in the boondocks of Georgia, a church in the middle of a neighborhood where houses like 1 to a block kind of thing. And we were scared, and we went in, and it was very ritualistic and all of that, and people yelling out in Chinese, and people wearing gowns and suits and all kinds of things. And it was very weird.
It was very weird, actually.
But after that day, I felt a calmness that I had never felt before in my life.
that is the exact same thing, I wanted to convey about my experience as well. There's often and can be the case in any individual who's on a journey and who particularly engages in study around deepening their understanding of the path and the way and all that other kind of stuff. It's possible to get very cerebral.
Total.
About the whole thing.
Right, science of mind.
In your head, et cetera, et cetera.
It's a mental thing, but not
what
the Tao.
Was so beautiful about the Tao was that it was experiential.
Yes.
And it wasn't even necessarily about what they were saying. It was the feel, the vibe, the aura. And I recall an expression that they use, that sticks with me to this day because it feels so appropriate when they talk about the heart-to-heart transmission. That, and I mentioned in the previous show about kind of manifesting out of my heartbeat. There was such a palpable, tranquil vibe and tranquility in that space, which was one of the words that a good friend of mine who I invited to the Tao experience used as soon as he walked out. And he was literally, just before the ceremony, kicking and screaming. Where do you have me? What am I doing here? And he walked away, his first word was tranquility. So it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. And it's having the courage, surrendering. Because you have to surrender to do the Tao. The Tao is not cool. It's not fun. Ego kicks and screams. Because I've taken classes, you go once a month and take these classes. And you have to sit still and you have to wear appropriate clothes. And you have to sit up and listening, no talking. Very super high, respectful, and open. And they talk. The way I describe Tao is you go to Sunday, any kind of Sunday church thing, and you get a message. They talk for an hour and you get a message, a little one-liner, and you're like, oh, okay, that's a good one-liner there. But in Tao, they're like, all right, everybody ready? Liner.
Right,
And it's so rich. There's no fluff. There's certain stories that'll give you explanations. And what I love about the Tao is review.
Right.
All it is they don't tell, learn, be like this, do this,
No,
none of that.
no.
They just lay it out there and it lands in your lap and you're like, oh.
Right.
Inventory. Okay, check. I need to do that. Respect for parents. Okay. Then the 3-day Dows, it's like dipping in the darkest of the sea.
Right.
And saying, how do you feel now?
3 days of this, right?
Yes.
I got to tell you a funny story about the Tao. The 3-day. All right. So I had been through the ceremony. I had received the blessing and I was loving it. I was reading. They send you away with a book. You read it and so forth. And I had signed up for the 3-day. And so, okay, cool. This will be great. This, that, and the other. By the time it came, I was starting to review. I was starting to say, yeah, that was a weird experience, the ceremony and all this other kind of stuff. And how well do I know these people? And we're going to be up in a mountain in North Carolina. I have to drive 3 or 4 hours just to get there. And so I think I told you this. I packed an escape bag.
Yeah.
So I had like a secondary bag in addition to my main bag and materials, just in case I found myself on the run or something, trying to escape a cult or something like that.
Right.
And so, and then I've got this huge man who's riding with me, the young fellow who rode with me.
Yes.
I was like, oh, this could all be a setup. But you know what?
You even questioned. I remember you even questioned your relationship with me. Like,
absolutely. I was like, wait a minute, how well do I know Ursula? I don't know her that well. You know what I'm saying? This, that, and the other. But, there was this, there were two things. There was me noticing myself and the self-talk and the self-dialogue that was going on. And there was this thread of trust. This openness to the reality or the possibility that this is going to be a great experience, et cetera, and so forth. And of course it was.
Yeah.
It was very powerful. And then the the vegetarian
Aspect
cuisine,
of it. Yep.
an aspect of it. I thought it was going to be tougher than what it was. And matter of fact, I carried, there you make a commitment, to do 30 days afterwards, and I did that afterwards. Which, if I thought the 3-day was tough, I thought the 30 days after was going to be impossible. But it wasn't.
Right.
And I learned how to make some stuff that I never knew I could make and enjoy. I discovered I can make some pretty good vegetarian pizza. So it was just it was very powerful. And you know what? It was probably, I told the story earlier about kind of this 6-year arc in this phase, that I've gone through. It was probably the most deeply transformative phase, because, you go through cycles, and cycles have a high point and they have a low point. And you could stay in the same place and just go high and low and high and low.
Easy.
But it certainly ensured my momentum in the right direction.
Yep.
And so, because the depth of where it touches is unmistakable and it's almost impossible to articulate.
Yeah. And I like how you described that, the 3-day Dow, because really on the spiritual path it's that over and over again. And the reason why I diversify and do so many teachings, and I'm very clear to keep each one individual. Because if I start blending them, then I'm disrespecting the teacher and the teaching. A lot of work, a lot of history has gone into making each teaching the way it is and what it is. So I've always kept my lines clear of which one I'm doing at this moment. And one that we didn't mention is the Arhatic practice, which is another spin-off of pranic healing, which is a deeper personal, spiritual prayer meditation activity with retreats and so on. So that's even another aspect. Why I do so many at the same time is I have to keep an eye on my teachers because they are also human. And the students that are behind me, when I introduce to a new thing, I say, okay, you're on your own. I'm here, I've got your back.
Right.
But this is your experience, and we need to watch these human beings because at any point they could fall off. Ego is very sneaky, and the higher we go, it's almost like the less grounded we can be.
Yeah.
The less resourced and referenced as far as ego sneaking in.
I call it the skinny limbs. Getting
good.
out on the skinny limbs.
Yes. Yeah. So, keeping an eye on them, because we can't always support those people high up, but we can keep an eye on what. Because if they start jumping off the cliff and we're not being awake and responsible and self-aware and present to our process, we want to blindly follow, and that's how we end up not on the path to begin with. Because mass consciousness says, just follow me, buy this, do this, go to this college, get this job, marry, picket fence, like, here you go. And we're all like, do, cows, just following along in the herd. But when we're on the spiritual path, each step, we don't know what to expect next. And that's that mindfulness that we've been talking about. So I like to do these deep studies that are relatable, but different, deep in their own ways, and always learning, always challenging. So I think when we say chop wood, carry water, the not joke spiritual comment is, what does somebody do before they're enlightened? Chop wood, carry water.
Chop wood, carry water.
And what do they do after they're enlightened?
Chop wood, carry water.
Right. So this is these practices that I do are always chop wood, carry water. They're hard work. They're not easy. You don't want to get up and go to that thing anymore. you go, and that's it. So thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for being on this show with me to show the behind the scenes work that people like us are doing. And service is really the foundation of it, the reason why I do the work that I do, so I can be as clean and pure and as intelligent and powerful as I can for my service. And I know that's what you do too.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Way of the Spiritual Path here at the Lighter Side Network.